Joe Rogan and Justen Wren just did a pretty solid segment on whiskey on the latest podcast, which is freaking awesome. I thought it'd be fun to do a quick video talking about what they got right, what they potentially got wrong, but more importantly, this is kind of an opportunity for two worlds to come together, which is always exciting. How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. I'm Jesse and this is Still It. Normally, we talk about making your own alcohol at home, but today we're doing something a little bit tangential and we're talking about Joe Rogan and Justen Wren's segment on whiskey. I can't believe I'm about to do this, but I'm about to introduce Justen Wren and Joe Rogan on my little 100,000 subscriber channel. It seems futile, but just in case you don't know, Justen Wren is an MMA fighter who also runs the Fight for the Forgotten charity, I guess you would call it, and that's actually a pretty cool and pretty badass thing. So if you don't know what that is, you should totally check it out. Joe Rogan, at a glance, is the biggest meathead on the face of the planet. He's tank, bow hunts, all tied up in MMA, black belt jiu-jitsu. You get the idea, but he also happens to have the biggest podcast on the face of the planet. And if you listen to that podcast frequently, you'll know that he has a talent for finding lots of different people from lots of different walks of life and having real long conversations with them. I don't agree with everything he says. In fact, I can't imagine there's anyone on the face of the planet that does, but I do admire his ability to get real, transparent discussions happening with such a huge range of people. Anyway, on to the damn whiskey stuff, right? So, to set the stage, basically, Joe Rogan helped Justen Wren out with some of the Fight for the Forgotten fundraising stuff. And Justen Wren, through Buffalo Trace, is sort of saying thank you to Joe Rogan by giving him a single barrel pick, and he's allowing him to choose one of 4 barrels that he's going to be able to bottle and, you know, have on site. Pretty freaking cool. Obviously a very smart move from Buffalo Trace, considering Joe Rogan's just moved to Texas and he's discovered that Texas whiskey is damn fine. By the way, what do you think? How freaking cool would it be if we could get the Whiskey Tribe guys to tee up with Joe Rogan and give him a flight of all Texas whiskey? That'd be pretty dope, wouldn't it? What do you reckon? Anyway, the stage is set. Joe's got 4 glasses in front of him and he's got to choose which of those 4 barrels he's going to get 200 and something bottles of to be able to have in the studio, give away to guests, so on and so forth. The reason I wanted to talk about this is I think it's a really cool illustration of 2 different worlds coming together. And those 2 different worlds are the people that just drink whiskey because whiskey's nice and I drink it, and the absolute whiskey snobs. Let me tell you guys, there's nothing in this world much more whiskey snobbish than choosing your own single barrel. That really is a pretty whiskey snobbish sort of thing. Joe Rogan, on the other hand, he's a guy that drinks whiskey. He's not really interested in the finer details or pulling flavors apart. He either likes it or he doesn't like it. He drinks it or he doesn't drink it. That's about it. And the point of this video is that I want to be able to sort of show you that this is a really cool illustration of whichever side of the fence you sit on. It doesn't matter. That's cool. You can enjoy the whiskey the way you want to enjoy it. And probably just as importantly, let the people on the other side of the fence enjoy the whiskey the way they want to enjoy it. And it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, you can probably learn something from the other side. Anyway, what do these guys get right and what do they get wrong? First of all, Justen showed up with a set of glasses, and to be honest, I couldn't really see them 100% clearly because my video was choppy and crappy, probably because there's millions of people watching it. But it looked like they were using something pretty close to a Glencairn. Sorry, excuse the grain. I was using that for illustrative purposes in another video. Now, the idea behind these glasses is that it allows the whiskey to sit with a relatively large surface area in the bottom, and then it funnels those vapors into a narrower opening at the top of the glass. It's basically a tulip shape and allows you to smell a whole lot more off the whiskey when you're nosing it. Sounds like wankery, I know. Trust me guys, it's not. It's really, really not. Try it side by side. Same whiskey. Put it in 5 different glasses, random different shapes you've got around the house, and try it. It's going to taste like 5 different whiskeys. So kudos to Justen, or to be honest, probably Buffalo Trace through Justen, for getting that right and getting the right shaped glass to taste these things. If you just want to enjoy your whiskey, by all means, stick it in a rocks glass. Nothing wrong with that. But if the aim of what you're doing is to try and differentiate between multiple different whiskies, something like this is really, really going to help you. The first thing that Justin did as he was sort of pulling all the equipment out, which can, remember guys, if you're a whiskey snob, this is normal to you. But the idea of pulling equipment out for a whiskey noob is intimidating. What do you mean you brought your own glasses? Why would you bring, I've got glasses in my cupboard. What Justin did straight away was he started describing why a single barrel can be different. And that was the perfect thing for him to do. So big thumbs up on that one. He definitely got that right. And the reason I say this is, why am I tasting 4 different glasses if it's all made from the same distillery? Isn't it all going to taste the same? Once again, team, remember, if you're on the whiskey nerd side of things, remember that this isn't like obvious knowledge to the general public who just drink whiskey because it tastes good, you know? And he did a pretty good job of describing that. So what he was saying is that the whiskey comes out of the still and it goes into barrels, and that there are different influences on that barrel that just make it almost impossible for 2 barrels that came out of the same run on the same still to end up tasting the same, especially when you get, 8 years down the track. The main one that he sort of described was the wood. Yes, 100%. The same wood from the same freaking tree put into a barrel that sits right next to each other in the warehouse for the same amount of time is going to end up probably tasting a little bit different as well. So yes, the wood is a huge influence. He probably didn't have time, or to be honest, the knowledge, because let's face it, he's sort of acting as a proxy here. He admits himself he's not a whiskey nerd. There's so many other things to add here as well, but I really can't fault him for not bringing those up. He also, in the middle of that, brings up that the whiskey comes off the still white. Once again, bravo, good job, sir. And that then the wood makes up 70% of the flavor that ends up in the final whiskey. Now, this one, I don't know, man, it's debatable. I hear people arguing both sides of the same coin on this one. Personally, I sit on the side of this argument where I think 70% is a huge overstatement of what the wood brings to the table. And that is simply because if you've ever tried this, you take vodka and age it on wood for the same amount of time you would age, a bourbon or whatever. The resulting product does not taste 70% like bourbon. It really doesn't. It's nice and it tastes in some ways similar to bourbon, but there's a whole lot missing from it. Now, this is going to depend and differ based on the type of whiskey you're making. So if you're making something like an Islay whiskey, obviously this isn't bourbon, but I'm going a little bit wider to sort of strengthen the metaphor. A huge component of that flavor is smoke. So I would say the influence of the wood dives even lower. If you're making something more like a Tennessee whiskey, where you're potentially filtering the bejesus out of it with charcoal, the actual new make that you've got going into the barrel has much less boldness to it, so it is going to rely more on the wood. So I can't argue with what he said. I don't think it's wrong necessarily. I just wanted to sort of state my case on it to explain the situation a little bit more to those of you that are potentially new to whiskey. Let me just state for the record too, when I say whiskey, remember that all bourbons are whiskeys, not all whiskeys are bourbons. So in a lot of ways, those two words are interchangeable for the meaning of this video. A little bit later on in the podcast, when Joe is actually starting to taste the samples, Justin gives him a little bit more information about each of those samples. Now, this is something that I don't think it's necessarily he did wrong, and once again, it's not like he is a whiskey nerd, so he's trying to do a job on behalf of someone else, so I really can't fault the man for this. But if you're doing this at home, guys, what I will say is he muddied the waters with more information and then gave Joe no reason to know why that matters. So he told him the age, and to be fair, most people out there just sort of associate with older equals better, which I do not believe to be true at all, especially when you're doing a single barrel pick. But nonetheless, at least these people have some sort of understanding of what that means. And he also gave the warehouse that it was in and the location of the warehouse. And here's the thing, guys, if you don't know the sort of parameters and the things that are happening in those warehouses, giving you that information means absolutely nothing to someone that's doing a tasting. And anytime you throw extra information at someone that's doing a tasting, it just jumbles things up for them. They've only got so much bandwidth, especially if you're a person who doesn't know what information's important, what's not. You're just trying to taste the damn whiskey and see which one you like. Throwing information at them that doesn't help them, and you don't give them a story behind why that information matters, just stay away from it. But right after that, he gave a pancake analogy. I mean, who doesn't love a pancake analogy? And basically what Justin said was, think of it like this. There's 4 pancakes sitting in front of you. Don't try and be wanky about it. Don't try and tell me what's different about them. Don't try and overthink it. Just which damn pancake do you like the best? I've never heard the pancake analogy before, but I thought that was freaking brilliant. And even though Justin is not a whiskey nerd, that, like we've said many times in this video already, I just want to make sure you don't think I'm having a go at him personally. Even though he's not a whiskey nerd, it is a wonderful, wonderful illustration of how someone that is a whiskey nerd can reach out to someone that's not a whiskey nerd. And I think that's beautiful. And this comes around even more intelligently later on. Remember that little point I made earlier on, and I said it was going to come back even more beautifully later on? Justen Wren also suggested that Joe Rogan think about choosing a whiskey based on his friends that don't like whiskey and what they would appreciate drinking. Beautiful! Beautiful! That is the personification of how a whiskey nerd can apply what they know about whiskey to help the people out that don't like whiskey. So, it's the age-old thing. If you love crazy, fiery, barrel-proof spirits, don't go giving that to the person that wants to try bourbon for the first time. Don't offer that out to them first. So once Joe has tasted all 4, he very honestly says they all taste the same. And freaking kudos to him, dude. Because I'll tell you what, when you're in that situation, it is very, very tempting to start making bullshit up. It really is. Now, if you're the whiskey nerd sitting on the other side of the table, you might be very, very tempted to not respect that answer, because to you, they taste different. And let me tell you guys, if you're new to whiskey, they really, really do taste different, I promise you. But as the whiskey nerd, respecting that answer and not poo-pooing it lets you move on to the next step with that person. If you want to take the next step, if you want to go and try and educate them a little bit, and I don't mean that in a degrading, demeaning manner, I just literally mean guide them through how the whiskies are different. But the trick is to only do that with people that give a damn and that want to learn it. If they're just like, yeah, it all tastes good, I'd drink any one of them, which is pretty much what Joe was saying, right? Let them have it, man. Okay, cool. You drink this one, I'll drink this one. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be any more. And because Joe was pretty much at that point, like, dude, they're all really nice, I enjoy them all, I'll pick this one. I think it was fine for Justin to let it go and move on at that point. But what he could have done, if he thought that Joe was interested, or he thought that, you know, for the sake of the podcast or whatever, would be to start dropping a few little tasting notes about each whiskey that illustrate the differences between them. Because when you're new to whiskey and you're tasting out of the glass, everything just tastes like Bernie and kind of good whiskiness or bad whiskiness. But honestly, having someone sort of sitting over your shoulder saying, have a think about this. This one tastes a little bit more cherryish, or this one's got a little bit more honey in it. Some of those things really can just, you know, turn a light on in your head and help you turn a corner. So there you have it, team. I think it was really, really cool to see something like this happening on such a freaking huge platform. It's awesome for whiskey. Was a little bit disappointing to me that there wasn't someone in the room that could give a little bit more knowledge every now and again. Not from the point of the podcast, not from the point of what they did. I thought it was amazing, but from a hobbyist's point of view, from the whiskey side of things, it would have been nice to get that out there as well. But on the whole, they both did a absolutely wonderful job. If you've got any comments on this and you think that I missed something, that I got something wrong, chuck them in the comment section down below. And obviously, if you haven't listened to the freaking podcast, go and do that now. I'll put a link in the description down below. I think that's freaking beautiful. And for the sake of the development of the whiskey industry, the whiskey hobby, the whiskey hobbyists, I think the world needs more shit like that. Alright guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a whole lot. It tells YouTube that this was a good video and it should show it to other people. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button down below. I'll catch you next time. Keep on chasing the craft. See ya.